welcome to WagerTalk TV. My name is Minty, and I'm joined by Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV on Twitter and Marco D'Angelo at Marco in Vegas on Twitter. In this video, we're going to talk about betting conference tournament games. Now, Ralph, some of these teams are going to see each other for the third time this season, and they say all the time that teams don't win 3 times. So what? Like all 3 times. So,
it's always difficult to beat a team 3 times. Well,
TNA. Give us some TNA.
TNA, how about this? Going back 1,000 games in conference tournaments, in conference tournaments. If you lost each of the first 2 times in that season, you are 50.4% against the spread the 3rd time. So, yes, you may only win 27% of the time straight up. You're actually 291 and 759 in those 1,000 games, but you're 511 and 502 against the spread. So a lot of times when a team has beaten you twice already, perhaps they let down a little bit. We beat this team twice. We don't have the same motivation. So the team that actually has gotten beaten twice has covered 50.2%. Now, I do have 2 scenarios which I am going to pull out. If you lost each of the 2 games that season as a favorite, and now you're a favorite, you have covered 55% of the time, which makes sense. You've been embarrassed twice. You lost as a home favorite. You lost, and it's tough to be a road favorite. And now you're the favorite again. That is a 55% play, betting on the favorite that has lost twice. And then the last one is teams that lost both as a dog don't do well as a dog. They're 47%. So again, the favorite situation, the dog situation works out to both, and it's something that you can't be swayed. Again, urban myth versus what the real numbers say.
You know, in theory, it makes sense when people say that, and you can understand why that urban myth grew that way, is because you say, oh, well, you know, it's hard to beat the same team 3 times.
And maybe so in the NFL, because teams are so evenly matched. But if you're Duke and the team's Wake Forest, well, oh no, Duke lost to Wake Forest. But if you're the best team in the conference and the worst team in the conference and you beat them twice, no, it's not hard to beat them a 3rd time.
But what I like to do in the conference tournaments, Minty, is when you are looking at these teams, most of them it'll be the 2nd meeting, because so many of the conferences are so big now that they don't play each team twice. But what I like to do is go back and look at the meetings when they played. Was there something different, situational-wise, that maybe swayed that outcome? Look at the meeting and see, okay, when these teams played during the regular season, what was the game before they played? What was the game after they played? Was one of the teams coming off of a big game? Was it an overtime game? Was it
a Marco sandwich spot?
A Marco sandwich spot, absolutely. Was it a game like you were playing that first time where you played? And I know, Ralph, you talk about this so much when you do the Joe's Angles of the Day for the radio show with Dave Koken. And, you know, we read your angles in that. You talk about teams when they come off of the second of, road games. Was that the situation? Was somebody playing like you talked about? I think one of your angles last week was when teams play that Utah-Colorado back-to-back in the Pac-12. Well, obviously, if that team's in the 2nd game of that, we know that's a negative situation, and that's why that result occurred the way it did. It was a bad situation for them. Was it a team that was coming off a Saturday game and playing a big Monday game where there's not that many games and you're the spotlight? They get up for those type of games, and maybe that's why they were flat in the next game. So I look at things like that. Those are angles to justify what the result was and maybe make me see that the result's going to be different this time because that team's not in a negative situation. Another thing that I'll tell you about, and this is something that we all know, I'll give you an example in the Big 12. West Virginia is not played well on the road at all this year. This is one of the best defensive teams in the country. They're a top 5 defense. I think they're number 2 against 3-point allowing shooting percentage. This is a very good defensive team, but they don't travel well. And what's the old saying all the time, Ralph? Well, defense is travel. You usually should do that. The thing about West Virginia, why I think they struggle so much in the Big 12 on the road, which then will become a benefit for them when they're in a conference tournament, is they're going to be stuck in one location. West Virginia, geographically, is not a Big 12 team. So when they go on the road, it's not like a normal team that's going from Oklahoma to Kansas or Texas to Oklahoma. These are
or a bus ride in the ACC when you're playing the triangle team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a tough road trip for them, and a lot of times when you're going from West Virginia out on the road back to West Virginia back on the road, it's a bad situation. When they get into the tournament, I think West Virginia, and that'll be something we'll talk about later with specific teams, they're going to be a good sleeper. I think that can make a deep run in the Big 12 tournament for things like that. So those are the things that I like to look at when you're talking about those first meetings.
I thought you were going in a different direction with West Virginia, and I just want to expand on that. You talked about home-road dichotomies. Yep. You know, I'm going to give you a site. You go to StatFox, and you go to college basketball, and you look at their ATS records, you look at their shooting percentages, and they have home and roads. I go and I pull down every road, all the road records, the road ATS records, and the road shooting percentages to see how those teams do away from home. Compare those and not season-to-date numbers, because there are some teams that play so strong at home and so weak on the road, and there are some teams that play very well on the road. So you want to look at those road-only records when you're comparing teams. And lastly, it's going to be very obvious for me, my last point is look at the schedule of how they play. There are some conferences that give massive edges to the 1s and 2s. The Horizon, for example. You get a double bye if you're the 1 or the 2 seed. Your guys are playing up to 3 games in advance. The Missouri Valley is another one. Your 8, 9, 10, and 11 teams play a play-in game. They play at 7 and 9 p.m. at night. The lowest seed who plays at 9 p.m. at night turns around and plays the number 1 seed at noon the next morning. So that's the way the conference is set up. They're giving those ones an advantage. Some teams don't have nearly, some conferences don't nearly have that advantage. And I'm going to mention one more point. This doesn't have to do with conference tournaments, but right before conference tournaments, the CUSA, only 12 of 14 teams get in. Big West, only 8 of 9. Horizon, only 8 of 10. America East, 8 of 9. NEC, 8 of 10. So when you're looking at games this last week, there's a lot of teams fighting for that last spot just to have a chance to play in the conference tourney. That's a powerful motivation if they're playing a team that's already in and can't improve their seedings. So you have to look at those bottom seeds from those conferences where everyone doesn't get in, and you can find some value there.
Another thing when you're looking for value is, again, going back to those first meetings, look at the team, how they were playing at that time of the season. A lot of times they will have met early in the season. And Ralph, I know you're big on this. A lot of teams, everybody doesn't bring back starters. We talk about the blue chip programs all the time. It's reloading almost the entire roster every year because they have all those one and dones. But there are a lot of, mid-major teams that maybe only had 2 starters coming back and they started the season out slow. But you saw the last month of the season, the team gelled as those young players matured as you get, to game 25, 26, 27, 28. And if they played earlier in the season when they weren't as good, and, you got to factor that in. And don't just assume, well, they got beat by 12, they're going to get beat by 12 again. No, this is a different team at this part of the season.
Absolutely.
Wow, great stuff, guys. Thank you. If you like our videos, hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up, and be sure to share our videos with all your friends.